Hey, good afternoon. I heard a rumor that I might be about the last speaker between you and a happy hour or something like that. So they gave me a speech, and I think they did it because they thought I would talk longer if I just tried to ad lib. So I'm going to try to stick to this, but I just tell you, it's nice to have allies in the House like Representative Hageman. Thank you very much. Good job over there. It's good to work with her, and it's good to have folks that understand what happens in the western part of our country. Thanks for the opportunity to visit with all of you today. For those of you from out of state, welcome to the beautiful Black Hills of South Dakota. You're all here today because you recognize the importance of preserving your way of life as independent ranchers and producers, as well as the role that RCAF has in advocating for it. But oftentimes in today's world, in order to preserve a good thing, you have to fight for it. That's exactly what we're doing in each and every day, and we're all in this fight together for the future of this industry. I know many of you personally, and as I look around the room and as I kind of observed you from the back a little bit, I notice that there are a few of us that are getting a little bit long in the tooth, and there's a little more gray hair than what there used to be, me included, for what hair I have left. We've been all around the block and we've seen it all. We've seen bad years and we've seen good years like the last couple. But one thing is for sure, and that is that we share a very common mission. Everything we do is not about us. It's about the next generation and the one after that. Our goal is to leave this campsite just a little bit better than how God gave it to us. Over the last year, I've gotten to know a young couple fairly well, Charles and Heather Maud. I know they're here today, but I'm not sure if they're in the room yet. If this industry that we love is going to survive and thrive, we need more Charles and Heathers. We need more of the 20 to 40-year-olds who will carry on the brand and maybe even get a new one of their own. That's why what we're doing in Washington and in this room today are so very important. In order to make sure that this way of life survives, we need to find ways to add value to the commodity so producers can better market their products. That's why mandatory country of origin of labeling is so important. Producers, young and old, need MCOOL. Now, let me say it loud and just let me say it very, very clear. We need MCOOL in the Farm Bill. It's good for our producers. It's good for our producers, but more importantly, it is good for consumers. I formally asked Secretary Rollins to work on establishing a framework for re-implementing MCOOL here in the United States. We passed MCOOL in Congress at one point. Canada and Mexico fought like hell to get it repealed because they know that their products simply aren't as good, and they had a competitive advantage. They know that given the choice, American consumers would choose your products every single time. We must negotiate our trade deals in that way that allows for MCOOL without the threat of retaliatory tariffs from foreign countries. We can't continue to allow foreign beef to have the upper hand in this marketplace. We have to put American producers and American industries first. Again, MCOOL needs to be in the upcoming Farm Bill, but to get this done, we will need your help. If we want to accomplish anything in this industry, we need to broaden the base and widen the tent. Like it or not, the House and Senate Ag Committees and the Farm Bill are not primarily focused on our farmers and ranchers. Over 75% of the spending from the Farm Bill is focused on consumers. Furthermore, the majority of the members on the Senate and House committees, including some of the chairs, don't come from what are considered farm states, or as I like to say, states where cows outnumber people. Instead, they come from states where consumers vastly outnumber producers. There are only 9 states in the country where cattle outnumber people. If each of the senators in those 9 states were supportive of a specific piece of legislation, we'd only have 18 senators in support, and it takes 60 votes to get anything done in the Senate. If we want to accomplish anything in Washington, we need to shift our focus. Instead of just talking in circles among ourselves, we need to prioritize having a uniform message going out of our circle, a message that will bring consumers into the discussion. Because at the end of the day, all ag policies, especially Farm Bill policy, should be driven by consumer demand and market access for the high quality products that you produce. That's why our message needs to continually be focused on consumers and the negative impact of increased market consolidation. In 1921, when the Packers and Stockyards Act was signed into law, 5 major packers controlled 55% of the beef market. Today, over 100 years later, 4 meat packers control over 80% of the entire market. We're moving in the wrong direction. And while we are on the topic of control, let's talk about this, dare I say, let me just call it what it is. It's a dumbass RFID mandate. Producers don't need DC bureaucrats telling them how to manage and track their livestock. USDA's RFID mandate is a federal government overreach, plain and simple. I've introduced legislation to block the Secretary of Ag from mandating the use of electronic tags in cattle and bison herds. If farmers and ranchers want to use electronic tags, they can do so voluntarily. A government bureaucrat has no business telling a producer how to manage their herd. These are herds that you care about. You're going to do a good job without them. And while we're on the topic of bad USDA policies, for years, USDA rules allowed for foreign beef to be labeled as a product of the USA, even if it was simply processed or packaged in the United States. Not only is that unfair, it is flat out untrue. I fought like hell alongside many of you in this room, and it feels good to say that we came out on top. Last year, the Department of Ag finalized a ruling that only beef that has been born, raised, slaughtered, and processed in the United States can bear the product of the USA label. For all of you in this room, that seems like common sense. But I don't count on every bureaucrat that might come through USD over the next several years to feel the same way. That's why I've introduced legislation that would codify this rule, placing it permanently into law. And while this rule out of the USDA was a win for us all, it's not enough to simply know if beef was made in the USA. If it's not from here, we have to know where it is from. We need to keep fighting for labeling transparency here in the United States, because when we say that foreign beef is lower quality, it's not just lip service. Let me just give you an example. Let's take Paraguay. In 2023, Biden's USDA decided to publish a rule that allowed beef imports from Paraguay despite the presence of foot and mouth diseases in their herds. USDA submitted this rule even though they hadn't conducted an inspection in Paraguay since 2014. So my colleagues in the Senate and I told the administration, hell no. We voted to overturn the rule by a vote of 70 to 25. Now, while the Congressional Review Act was never brought up for a vote in the House, and that's, by the way, no fault of Representative Hageman's, by the way, the sentiment stands. American beef is second to none, and we don't need diseases from foreign cattle getting into the herds that you work so hard to maintain. We continue to work on banning beef from Paraguay to protect your livelihood. We've also been working with Secretary Rollins and her team to address the threat of the New World screwworm from Mexico. In May, she suspended the movement of live cattle, horses, and bison through the U.S. southern border to stop screwworm from coming to the United States. While policies like this actually can help you and your operations, it was Ronald Reagan who once said, "The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, and they still are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help." There's perhaps no one that this phrase resonates more with than the Maud family. Now, I know that they were here earlier and they shared their experience with you. And I don't need to retell their story. Not only did you hear it all from them just a little while ago, but you know their story because of many of you. It's, well, one of the concerns that you have as well. I bet that you're all good stewards of the land and good partners with the Forest Service. So it doesn't seem crazy to think that the Forest Service should be a good partner to you in return. But being indicted with no notice, despite agreeing on a plan with officials beforehand, is not being a good neighbor. Indicting both Charles and Heather separately, so they need separate attorneys and can't talk to each other, isn't being a good neighbor. requiring them to make arrangements for their children, Kennedy and Lyle, in case they're taken away, is not being a good neighbor. After learning all of the facts and a little advocating at the federal level, common sense finally prevailed and the charges against them were dropped. While they never should have been indicted in the first place, I was very glad that we were able to participate and to help with others to see that justice finally prevailed and to help the mods and support them. I also have to give a shout out to one of my team members that's here with me today, and by the way, he's going to hang around for the rest of this convention as well, and that's Jim Selkert, who knows the mods personally and worked very hard to keep this story in front of us, and he just simply would not give up, and he made damn sure that we continue to follow up on a regular basis. So Jim, thanks, and that's the kind of folks that we need to have for friends, for all these folks in here. Now, while Charles and Heather's charges were eventually dropped, we must make certain that this doesn't happen to another family in South Dakota or anywhere. I've introduced the Fair Fence Line Act, which would create a formal mediation process requiring the Forest Service to address boundary disputes before going as far as indictments. It would establish a committee of producers like you, as well as representatives from state ag departments, to mediate disputes and provide recommendations. As you can see, the fight to preserve your way of life never stops. As Ronald Reagan would say, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. True today. So today I'm here to say thank you for being in the fight. Thank you for supporting folks like Harriet and myself, and we have your six. We're going to continue to do the best job that we can to help. We want you to stay in touch with us. We want you to participate with us. That's our part of the job, is to be there and to try to be a voice for you. And please know that we will be in the trenches with you, and we will keep up the good fight. Jim Selkert is going to be here. He knows the industry inside and out. He's one of the guys that takes care of baby calves himself and watches their mamas and understands the need for good grass and good livestock. He's going to be here to help. Please reach out to him. He's interested. He wants to know what's going on in the industry, and he does a great job of keeping us all informed. And with that, I'm not going to keep you from the next happy hour any longer than what I already have. Thank you all very, very much for attending and staying in the fight. Thank you.